I am very happy to be back in Rochester after quite a while, and I am very happy to meet a lot of old friends sitting here, some new ones too. I have been asked to share with you my ideas and views on love and the healing arts. It is a very topical subject because there are healers abounding, especially in the West, especially in the United States. All over, you go from city to city and you find a lot of people doing strange things, passing their hands, laying hands like this, looking in a strange way, and it all is going by the name of healing. I mentioned at another lecture earlier that my own experience with these healers has been somewhat strange, because I found most of these healers were very sick themselves, and many of them needed real medical treatment, and many of them are undergoing medical treatment. So the thought came back to me, was it not rightly said, physician, heal thyself, healer, heal thyself? Before you can go out and heal someone else, you must heal your own self. Healing as an art of giving relief to sick people, as an art of overcoming ill health, is as old as humankind. They give credit to Hippocrates for introducing what they call modern medicine. It is not modern. If it can go back to the Greek days, it couldn't be very modern. Why they call it modern is because the particular method they employed was a very obvious one, which logic and reason could understand very simply. The method has sometimes been referred to as allopathy. Allopathy means a change of pathos, the altered feeling, the altered state of the person. If a person has got fever and is hot in the body and in the head and the forehead, give something that will cool that person. Put some ice pack on the head. Give internal drugs, medications, herbs, whatever you like, which are the opposite of the state in which the person is. Thus came the treatment based upon the allopathic principle, or the principle of a different pathos. And this system prevailed for a long time. And people tried to find what were the remedies or methods of healing which could alter the state of the patient or the sick person. Even till today, modern medicine is relying mainly on this. But since what was used to alter the pathos itself created a fresh sickness, there were questions raised about the efficacy of the system. If you gave a drug to a person to cure that person, then the patient would become sick from the drug. Sometimes in the old days, the history of medicine tells us that if a surgeon found that a patient was in great pain on the right arm because of an injury, he would inflict a pain on the left arm, so he forgot about the pain on the right arm. And this was thought to be healing also. In modern day times, this is done in a more subtle way. The medicine that are given can often create a condition that makes you forget what you originally went for. Then you start getting treatment for the new problem created by the medication. This is going on till today. But they found later on that the simpler way was that if some part of the body was sick, cut it out. This became very popular, and surgery became a very special science, and people forgot the physicians and ran to the surgeons, because physicians would take long to give slow medication to remove the gallstones and kidney stones and other tumors and things that were developing inside the body, and to cure the miasmas that were in the body. But the surgeon took a knife and just cut it out, and you were out in a little while. So surgery became very popular. But later on, people found that a lot of people went to the surgeons, never came back. They ended up in the mortuary. Therefore, surgery went into infamy, because the surgeons, sometimes some people have called surgeons as legitimate murderers. They have legal sanction. And just because they happen to have the degree of master of surgery, that what they do with the knife is not illegal. People then began to react from this kind of healing based upon a physician who was merely creating new pathos in you instead of curing what was already wrong, and the surgeon who was just using a knife thinking he can cut off what he likes, mutilate the body in order to heal it. People reacted to that, and they said there should be something more natural than that. Hence came the birth of naturopathy. People said, let us go back to nature and let's live like nature wants us to live. And they went so far They looked at the natural things available like dirt and mud, and they've put all that dirt and mud and covered themselves with it. And they looked like horrible primitives. And they said, we are undergoing treatment on naturopathy. And they began to then go into other fads which they thought were based upon the principles of naturopathy. So the healing arts have moved through all these things. Then some people said, why should we put things upon the human body? It's such a perfect thing. We haven't understood what cures people. Because people who were sick came to a physician, to a healer, and sometimes the healer would smile. And the people felt happy and felt a good doctor was one who should smile. One who frowned could not cure his patients, but the one who smiled was able to cure his patients. I remember in Lahore, long time back, a doctor was very famous because he used to cure the sickness of the patient even before he gave any medicine. Just because he was such a cheerful person at the bedside of the patient. When he came, by his visit alone, the patients used to get well. So they began to think further. They said there must be something else that cures a person. We are trying to help something in the body to cure or heal the body. And they said the healer must be inside the body. They tried to look for the healer inside the body. A couple of centuries ago, a German doctor who was trying to find these strange cures, when he found a washerwoman accidentally stepped her foot into hot water, which had caused a problem for her earlier, she was cured. And he said, how can that happen? He began to look greatly into what causes sickness and what causes healing. And he found both are caused by the life force in the human body, which he called the vital force. And he wrote a book of philosophy on it called The Organon, describing how the sickness is a result of the life force, the vitality in the body not functioning in an exact natural contour. And therefore, if you can do something to help the vital force to correct itself, very little push if you can give it rightly, it corrects itself, and therefore the healer is also the vital force and not the external agent. He found out that where previously healing had been done and cures had been achieved, they were achieved not because of the medication, not because of allopathy, not because of naturopathy, but because the things that were used in the name of medication were themselves creating a condition in which the vital force could correct itself and heal. Therefore, the body was healing itself, but needed a little push once in a while. He tried by a method of provings to see what elements in nature can do this, and accidentally he discovered that what can cause a plant, belladonna, which could create a fever and great shaking of the head in a person by swallowing that plant in excess in the forest, when that person came, or a similar person came with a similar condition, a small bit of the belladonna plant cured the person of that condition. He was shocked. How can the same thing which is causing a problem also cure it? And he came up with the philosophy that what causes a problem must be distorting the vital force in the same way in which the curative power of the same medicine or herb can cure it. Pursuing this idea further, he went on to prove different kind of herbs that were available at that time and different kind of medicinal compounds that were available, and he tried to give those in excess to human beings who were ordinarily healthy, who had no sickness. And he began to record what happened to them. And when any patients would come with the same symptoms and signs which he recorded, he would give the same medication which had caused those symptoms, and they were cured. And hence he said, it is not the alteration of the pathos that helps the vital force to cure, it is the creation of a similar pathos in a minute way that causes the cure. And hence came the birth of homeopathy, where the principle adopted was that not its altered pathos that will cure, but similia similibus curantio. I was happy to see Samuel Hahnemann, who founded this system, his statue in Washington DC the other day, and just under his statue there only this written, similia similibus curantio. It is similar that will cure similar. But that was a big discovery because that led to the introduction of preventive medicine. People said, if you can cure by giving in a minute dose something that causes ill health, then why can't we give it in advance and prevent ill health? Why should we wait for ill health to come and then give that minute dose? and the immunization programs came up. Smallpox was eradicated by that system. Diphtheria, tetanus, so many diseases which were fatal and killed people in the past were taken care of by following this immunization program based upon that principle. But the principle illustrated that the curative agent is not the medication, is not the immunization, is not the medicine, but the vital force, the living force in a human being. This led people to try and study more of the living force. And when they went deep into the human body and got better technology to be able to study the body, then they went on studying the exact system in which this vitality of a human being operates. On the one hand, people were trying to look at life in a philosophic sense, in a religious sense, that life comes because a soul comes into the body. It's the soul that gives the power. When the soul goes, the body is dead with all the system intact. Therefore, the soul is the vital force, and the soul can cure the body, and it is the soul that is suffering when there is a distortion of the vital forces. The modern medical people who said, no, we want to go by empirical science. We don't want to go into this question of soul which nobody has seen. And we don't want to go and understand the religious concepts. You don't want to bring them into modern scientific medicine. They began to look into the other forms in which vitality can cure. And they came to the discovery of the antibodies in the bloodstream of a natural human being. Then they began to take pictures. And recently, as recently as 1986, they were able to develop cameras which could take the pictures of the cells. And they saw that in the bloodstream of a human being, there is movement of the cells, the white cells, the corpuscles, and there are no antibodies. We don't know where they are. And they would inject a little illness through an intruder, like a germ, like a parasite, like a virus, and an external agent which could cause distortion to the human system was introduced to the blood, and it was seen from nowhere. Large number of network like white network and yellow network like bodies would appear and just attack that and cure it. They took film of this. Recently a book has been published which is lying on my table in Chicago called The ABC of the Human Body or The Incredible Machine. There are two books that have just come which give you the pictures of these antibodies coming into appearance. They are not visibly apparent. A huge study is going on because of the problem of AIDS. The problem of AIDS was the acquired deficiency in the immunosystem itself, in the very system of antibodies. When that is faulted, they want to find out how. And because of that, greater study was made to find out what is happening to the vital system. So while one set of explorers are now trying to find out which is the best healing art in order to encourage these systems, the antibodies, those that come up due to the life process, and they can attack illness and get rid of it, there's another set of people who belong more to the philosophic and the religious groups and the spiritual groups who say no, healing has to be done from within and can be created by other means, like the forces that affect the human body other than introduction of either vaccines or introduction of drugs or medication. There should be something else to which the human vital force should respond. Well, they were right too. They found that even suggestion, even making an ordinary verbal suggestion to a person affects him. You could call a person and say, look, you will be well. And if the person's vital force responded to that, it would make the person well. And thus came a series of reported miracle cures, miracles being done in the church, several of them on television churches, so people could see and send more donations. All these things are happening in order to pinpoint that the curative force continues to be the vital force in the body, the life force, the soul force, the spiritual force, whatever is making one alive and aware. Whether you go by the other healing arts of the scientific medicine, or you go by these arts arising from suggestions and psychological inputs, they are both relying upon the same thing in the human body for healing. Up to this point, we have covered different approaches. In between, these things were grabbed. On the one side, those who were handling the body physically said, well, you don't have to treat the whole body. The soul of a human being must be lying only in his head. Therefore, if you can manipulate the head in different points, you can cure any disease in the body. Others said the head is hard to control because of the cranium, because of the bones here. Let's go on to something better. Some grabbed the spine, some grabbed the feet. Hence came chiropractic practices, hence came reflexology, and hence came many other systems of manipulation. Hence came the Chinese method of acupuncture. All these different systems came up trying to trigger off the response in the vital force in the human body in order to correct the malaise or the distortion that had occurred. On the other hand, those who believed in this suggestion, they began to introduce more hypnotic techniques, so that through hypnosis we should be able to help people. They were all calling themselves as scientific developers. But the religious and the spiritual group, they came up and said, it is not necessary that we should use these mundane, down-to-earth, temporal methods when the vital force is spiritual. Why can't we use something spiritual? And they began to use forces which they thought were spiritual. And they did not know what spiritual was. Many of them had never heard of spiritual. Some thought spirits means ghosts. And they invoked the aid of ghosts. And hence came all the witch doctors and the witchcraft in order to cure people. And we thought that that might be of the Middle Ages, but in many parts of this world it still goes on today, including civilized countries. They are still using some kind of voodoo and some cultist suggestions in the name of witchcraft to cure people, because they believe that other ghosts, entities, disembodied people are better qualified to cure the people than we who are in the bodies with our own limitations. The people have been trying that also. Some people thought the spirits meant the spirits that you can buy at a liquor shop. And they tried to give those too. That you must drown your worries. And the pubs and the liquor shops grew also in the same process. Drugs came to be used for other reasons, to alter states of the mind, not of the body. So we had a sequence of these things happening, all in the name of the healing arts, all in the name of curing the sick persons. But when the spiritual movement took hold, and they began to use what was spiritual material to heal people, whatever they understood of the spiritual material, they thought that would be appropriate. A large number of people thought spiritual material is a special kind of energy that we possess, which can be transmitted, can be used to cure the malaise or the sickness of a person. They tried to find out where the energy comes from. And they tried to find out whether everybody has it or only some gifted people have it. There were some people who could evoke that energy in them and have experienced themselves that they were having special energy experiences, and they employed to cure other people. But when they looked at the sources of energy, they found that the subjective energy which they could evaluate, which they could feel, they could subjectively feel, arose from different parts of the body, from different levels. They turned to any area where spirituality has been growing. So they turned to China, turned to India, turned to the Middle East, turned to the countries to see how did you find those sources of special energy, the spiritual energy of which we hear so much. What is this yoga? We hear that you practice some kind of a yoga and you don't need medication. They began to study yoga. Some people were told yoga means turning upside down, put your head down and put your feet up. And yoga means locking yourself in strange lotus positions, or in a serpent position, or in the position of a peacock, or in the position of various kinds of animals and diagrams which they were shown. People tried those. Sometimes it would work on the allopathic principle. It took the attention away from the sickness. Sometimes it would not work. When they were told that these postures do not represent yoga, that yoga is a mental exercise, yoga is an exercise in gathering your attention through the energy centers, a great interest was awakened throughout the world, including the Western world, on what are these centers, the so-called chakras that these people are talking of. Can we have access to those chakras and build up the same energy? If we could build up, we could be great healers. And people began to practice the yoga of the 6 chakras, of the 6 centers, or the 7 centers. And they began to go deep into meditational practices which could take their attention to those chakras. And they found that these 6 chakras, the one behind the eyes, the one in the throat, the one at the heart region, the one at the navel, the one at the reproductive organs, and one at the rectum, that these were the points in the body that if we raised our attention from the toes, from the sole of the feet to the top of the head, when the attention is moved in the body gradually
seeing the reaction to what happens to that attention as we move in an excellent practice, in a yogic practice, we find these are the stages which kick up a radiation of energy which can be personally, subjectively experienced by the person who is doing it. This had been done for thousands of years in the East. So it became a great fad to practice yoga of the 6 chakras and find out the energy centers. And the energy centers became the subject of great talk. The heart center, it gives this experience. The throat center gives this experience of energy, of power. The heart center, center of the end, can end all misery. They didn't know it can end life also. So they began to talk of these methods of generating energy. And when they found that these centers could also be accessed from the spinal cord, and you could have a route along the spinal cord and flip between the centers and the spinal cord, and the flipping between the center, the second center, and the spinal cord gave rise to a strange energy. They called it the energy of the Kundalini, which had been described like that, the uncoiling of the serpent. Because this particular route between the spinal cord and the centers was coiled up, and it gave an actual experience like the uncoiling of energy. And they discovered these new forms of psychic and yogic energy. And they said, one who has this energy, he has the spiritual power to heal. And therefore these psychic energies should be used for spiritual healing. And yogis became, especially neo-yogis, the yogis of the West, began to become healers merely based on the practice of these access of the centers through attention. It was after a while they found that if they gathered some energy and they used it willfully with volition for curing somebody, they very often found the person who was cured was helped to some degree, and the person who was the healer was becoming sick. As if there was a transfer going on. They said, how can sickness be transferred? Sickness is for one person, how can somebody else have it? And they went into history. Has it ever happened before? And they saw hundreds of reported cases where people tried to heal somebody else and they took over the sickness of that person in the process of healing through the psychic mechanism of transfer of energy. They said, this is a strange thing. We are not really curing anybody. We are merely sharing ill health. We are not really giving any advantage to anybody. Where is the cure taking place? And the questions came up. Why are we sick? If it looks like there is certain amount of sickness and ill health and some suffering, some pain in the body, in the physical system, in the mind, in the astral system, in the sensory system, why is it coming from? Who is responsible? And the question arose of responsibility. Who makes us sick? Some people shouted at God. God, did you create this world to make us sick? And some undeserved people, healthy and rich with a lot of dollars to spend, they don't get sick. And we who are worshipping you and praying to you, we are getting sick. What kind of God are you? People shouted, God. People shouted at each other. People shouted at anybody they could to find out what is causing the sickness. They went to the priests, the rabbis, the yogis, the swamis, the gurus. They said, what is this causing sickness in us? We are not responsible for it. And the answer came, you are responsible for your own sickness. All said in one chorus. Nobody said somebody else is responsible. That was strange. When the reply came to these people who thought they were analyzing sickness on a spiritual basis, when they were told that sickness is caused by our own self, who are we trying to heal? We should find out the cause of our sickness. How are we responsible? How did we get it? They said, your actions alone are responsible for your sickness. They said, we didn't do anything bad. They said, are you sure or have you forgotten? Are you sure you did nothing wrong to get the sickness, or have you forgotten that you did something wrong? They said, to the extent we can remember. Do you remember what breakfast you had 7 years ago? No, that we don't remember. Then how can you remember what you did to have sickness? They said, we must have done something really wrong to forget it now, so we must remember it. They said, go back further. And people who were being asked to remember, some people shocked these investigators. They said, let me see, last year I did nothing that bad. Not the year before, not 5 years ago, not 10 years ago, not 50 years ago, not 70 years ago. Yeah, 80 years ago, I remember. This, how old are you? Oh, I am 60. How can you remember what happened 80 years ago? Oh, I quite forgot. But I do remember what I did. A few stray cases like this came up and gave rise to a popular theory of reincarnation, that this life is not confined to this body, nor is the sickness of this body confined to what we can remember in this body. That there may be actions for which we are responsible that have taken place prior to our taking this body. That there may be other forms in which we lived, and we are responsible for our actions even at that time, that they don't die with the bodily death and continue to the next incarnation. So people began to then investigate previous past lives. What did we do in past lives? And many past life experts came into the scene, and you could go and get a reading. You could pay $15 and they'll tell you what you did in the past life, knowing you there's no way for you to check. So they made a lot of money, the past life readers. They could explain every sickness from past life. They could explain every problem that you had, including mental problems, worries, financial problems, problems with your spouse, problem with your attachments, your love problems. Everything was based upon your past lives, which they called karma. Because karma was an action for which you are responsible and you get the reaction. As you sow, so shall you reap. Based on that principle, you said you have sowed all these seeds and therefore you are reaping now. Therefore, all you have to do is to find out when you sowed the seeds. Since you sowed them in an area you can't remember, we'll help you to remember them. But the theory became very popular. Actually, the theory was popular all the time. It is recorded as early as in the Vedas, which some people date to 10,000 BC. Some say, no, they are not so old. They are definitely not more old than 6,000 BC. But if you say they might be 5,000 BC, they say no, because 5,500 BC, there's another text which refers to the oldest scriptures called the Vedas. So when you start dating them, you find they're really very old. Way before the birth of Christ, people were accepting that the law of karma was operating not only in one lifetime, but in a series of lifetimes. It does not mean it only operates in one lifetime and another. It can operate in the same lifetime also. We can do something in this lifetime and become sick because of that. And we can get cured of that too. But it can also go on to things that have been happening in the previous lifetimes. So the question came up, why were we so stupid to do these things? Well, maybe we didn't know we were going to have another incarnation. Maybe we didn't know that all these things are being registered somewhere. We thought these were just, even today, when we do things, we feel, who is going to care to watch our actions? It's our own personal actions. Nobody is recording them. But there is some record being kept somewhere. Are these things recorded that one sequence can lead to another, one action can lead to another, and this is a continuous chain of action and reaction, that karma becomes destiny, and destiny leads to further karma, and karma again becomes destiny. It's a continuous cycle going on. The yogis were asked, have you any proof for these things, or are you just trying to make some speculation, guesswork, to keep us a little happy, that we can give the cause to something that we cannot have access to? They said, no, you can have access, but very few people have access to that part of human soul, or human consciousness, or human spirit, or human mind, or human sensitivity, or human awareness. Very few people can have access to that part where this is recorded. But it is recorded. You can't even remember what you ate 3 weeks ago, but if certain inputs are given to you, you can remember clearly. Till you remembered, where was it? One set of people said, well, let's call the area of consciousness which we don't remember as subconscious, below the conscious, or unconscious. Others said, well, it may not be subconscious, because subconscious means subordinate below this consciousness. It may be superconscious, maybe somewhere else. Have we any idea about it? So yogis of a deeper order began to go into this and went into meditational techniques to discover the reality of their own consciousness, not merely the reality of their body, because they found that the body was merely responding to what was recorded and written down there. And we were constantly writing something or the other on that process in consciousness, whether subconscious, unconscious, or superconscious. So the yogis began to delve deep and go inside through meditational techniques to find out what is the nature of consciousness. When they went into that, they found that the 6 chakras that had been taken as the spiritual centers of energy were no spiritual centers at all. They were not responsible for consciousness. They were not responsible for karma. There was no record maintained there. They neither created nor cured any sicknesses. That was a great disillusionment for the people who practiced the yoga of the 6 chakras. They said, if to find out that consciousness does not really belong to these chakras, and these are only energy centers reflected from the levels of consciousness, then they had to find out techniques of ascending, of going higher into expansion of consciousness to find out where it comes from. And hence, the discovery of the higher regions of existence, the higher dimensions of experience, the higher levels of consciousness. These were discovered as a reaction to this. And a lot of people became interested who were earlier not interested in finding out the higher levels of consciousness in a human being. And they found out that the 6 chakras were the lower chakras and did not represent the higher levels where this vital force existed in which the records of illness and healing can be preserved and seen. So when they went into the higher levels of consciousness, they found that the physical level was the experiential level which was most necessary for a human being in order to open the doors to higher levels. They found that this physical body was of immense value because in this body you could suffer pain and you could enjoy happiness. In this body you could make decisions and you could correct decisions. In this body you could create karma and you could avoid karma. In this body you could seek the Lord and you can reject the Lord. In this body you could become a divine person or you could become an atheist. This body, human body, gave these possibilities which no other body gave. They looked at all the bodies very carefully. If you see the records of the ancient seers and the Eastern mystics and yogis, how much they have worked on this, they found out there is no body. That means no vehicle of life available in the entire creation where this can be done except in the human physical body. They tried to look at birds, animals, trees, plants, mammals. They even went and looked at the disembodied spirits, angels, demons, monsters, disembodied entities. They looked at the vehicles of every one of them and found none of them could either create karma or avoid karma or repay karma except the human body. This is very strange. What was so special about the human body, human physical body, that this alone could create karma? That the illness came, the sick health came, the ill health came only from karma, and there was no other form in which karma could be created except the physical human body. It gave a clue that all our suffering is responsible because of our actions, not in any other form, but in human form, in human physical form. Why was that? Well, as more investigation was done, it was found out that the clue was you can only be responsible for something if you have the freedom or the choice to do that. You must have free will, otherwise you cannot be pinned down with responsibility. If you are given no choice, how can you be given responsibility? If everything is being determined by somebody else, then that somebody else is responsible, not you. How can then you be accused of a certain karma and therefore the result of the karma in the form of ill health? And it was found that it is only in the physical human body that we make decisions out of free will. That there is no other being, no other form, no other vehicle in which we use free will to make decisions. And because we are given this experience of free will to choose between different options, and we use our minds and think about it and deliberate, should I or should I not? Should I or should I not? This is wrong, but let me go ahead. Then we already sown the seed which will give us the illness and the sick health that comes as a result of this decision. So the ill health or the distorted vital force in the human system is a direct result of the decisions taken by the human being while in the human body through the mental process. This is karma. The creation of karma takes place only when we deliberate like this in the human head through our minds and make a decision. If we don't do it, there is no karma. What is happening by itself? We can't be responsible. What is happening because of this decision we are making with our discernment and discrimination and our actual consideration of what is good and bad, whether we should do it or not, when these considerations come into our head, then only karma is created. So it opened up a new insight into the nature of karma and therefore the nature of ill health and therefore the nature of healing. And it also explained readily how if karma is a mental activity and one's mind can create karma, then one's mind can also transfer karma, that one's mind can also take up karma. That if the psychic powers that were used to transfer karma were easily explained when it was found that karma was only a mental game. It was not a physical game at all. It was not the body that went through karma. It was the mind that went through karma. The mind created karma, the mind suffered karma, the mind suffered pain, the mind suffered illness, the mind suffered the distortion of the vital force. So the whole game of ill health, curing, healing, being good, bad, immoral, moral, high, low, the whole of this game of judgment, of valuation got confined to the human mind. When the yogis went to higher regions of experience, they saw that the very record where all this interlinking of one cause to another effect in the karmic pattern could be read was inside, on the mental plane. People went in meditation to their own mental spheres. They saw their own mental horizon. They saw their own universal minds. They saw the link between their mind and the total pattern of karmic creation in this universe. And they found everything recorded there. And they said, these are the greatest records we ever found, ever written anywhere. They are written in the sky, in the Akash. And they said, they must be responsible for all our happenings here, and we are responsible for writing them as they are written there. Therefore, karma was all recorded in the Akashic records, in the records in the sky, in the mental plane. And that was just 2 steps above, the sensory plane, the mental plane. So the discovery was made that when we talk of karma as the cause of ill health, we are talking of action and reaction taking place through our mind and recorded. Nothing goes waste. I had the privilege of once discussing with His Holiness the Dalai Lama of Tibet, the exiled spiritual leader of Tibet, about where these records are recorded and how they look like when somebody goes up there to look at the records in the Akash or in the high sky of the causal region. What do they look like? And he said that it's very difficult to read them because they are recorded in the sky called Shunya. I said, Shunya? Shunya means zero, isn't it? Shunya means nothing. He said, yes, precisely. Shunya means nothing, nothingness. And therefore these records are recorded in nothingness. But everything that has emerged and appeared in this world has appeared from nothingness. And therefore we can't easily read these records there. But we know where they are. There are regions of nothingness in the mental realm where all these records exist. But if we want to go above them, we have to be truly spiritual. Which means that the definition of spirituality underwent a change. Spirituality is neither going into the 6 chakras below, which is just delving into other energy sources, nor is it looking into the senses and the astral planes and having out-of-body experiences, which is nothing but an astral flight of a sensory body which is as unreal as this physical body, nor is it reading the records there and coming back and being unable to do anything under the sky of nothingness. That this is not spirituality, none of it is spirituality. These are mental games, games of the senses and the mind, and they don't represent spirituality. And you cannot call any healing that takes place within this domain as spiritual healing. All this healing is based upon the law of karma, and you transfer one to the other, and you just give and take, and you try to help, and you alleviate, and you make a person cheerful. It is all part of the law of karma. But if you want to have real spiritual healing, you must go above this domain of nothingness into a pure spiritual region where mind cannot go. Why did they come up with this? Because they found the whole law of karma was based upon the mind. That karma was created by the mind, suffered by the mind, paid off by the mind, rewarded by the mind. It never went anywhere else, neither below nor above. There is no karma in the senses of the body. The karma is in the mind. There is no karma in the soul and the spirit. The karma is in the mind. They found only one level of consciousness, one region of creation, one sky where all karma was included. But its shadow fell all over below. And therefore we suffered here. And we began to ascribe our ill health to the bodily changes, little realizing that the body changes according to the vitality that changes in it, and the vital force changes according to the karma shadow falling upon it, which is falling from our own minds. So a secret was found, and this also explained why suggestion could help, why hypnosis could help, why psychic things could help. Everything got explained once we knew that karma was responsible for our state in this world, and the karma was created by the mind, and karma was suffered and rewarded by the mind, and paid for and enjoyed by the mind. Once we found out that the human mind is doing it, we knew what was going wrong. And we also found out a good cure, a spiritual cure, to go above the mind. Now what happens if one goes above the mind? If you experience a state of being above the mind, what would you experience? A state of being of a human being, if it is above the mind, is a state of being in love, a state of intuitive, instantaneous knowledge, a state of beauty and joy unmatched by anything in the mental realm, a state of bliss. People have tried to describe that state of love, intuition, joy, beauty that is in the soul, in the spirit, and is supposed to be the spiritual state. If one gets into the spiritual state, one gets healed oneself. If one gets into the spiritual state of love, intuition, joy and beauty, one becomes the greatest healer. In the presence of such a person, other people get healed. It's the love of that person that can heal other people. Therefore, the real healer who can affect even the condition of the mind and can alter it because of the spiritual power that comes from the soul, which is the cause of the vital force, is the one who is using love as the healing power. Tantra, 6 chakras, other forms of energy, and so on for healing. So let us not mistake that these forms of healing are spiritual healing at all. They are not. The only spiritual healing is the healing with love, intuition, joy and beauty of the person who is the healer. And the healer must be healed himself, which means he must have an access within himself to his supramental region, the region above the mind, the region of the soul, the region of the spirit, which is full of love, joy, bliss, contentment, happiness, knowledge by itself without having to learn it. Of course, if you look at the teachings of the perfect mystics of the East, they have taught the same thing. They have said, don't go after these little tricks of the 6 chakras below. Don't be duped by these little energy centers and think you have got something spiritual. Don't start thinking just because the scenes are beautiful and pink and red and violet, therefore you have gone somewhere. You've gone nowhere. Don't think just because you can feel you're flying in the air, you don't even remember where your body is, therefore you have really gone high. You've gone low. That if you come back to this body and feel you are strong enough to tell people, I had a great spiritual experience because I was flying. Man, if you had a great spiritual experience, who are you telling now in the lower state, in the physical plane? These are all lower states. Don't go into these lower chakras and think you have gone high just because the experience is different from the physical experience. So these perfect mystics gave us the lesson. Don't waste your time. You are already awake and your consciousness is operating at the eye center. When you open your eyes and look out through the physical body, you know you are already at this level. Don't go down to the centers to discover the truth. Look at the yogis, what happened to them. The yogis traveled down to these centers and came center by center, one after the other. Ultimately, they came up to the same center from where they went down and said, we have discovered ourselves. We were here, we went down to see other regions, we come back, now we find we are here. What did they find? They thought they will go high from the 5th floor, 6th floor in the elevator. They took the elevator down, came back to the same floor, said we come back high because we went down first. Therefore, even for spiritual practice, even to be a spiritual student, even to be a follower of a spiritual path, don't waste your time in these chakras which are below our wakeful consciousness in the physical plane. If you want to go up above the eyes. Concentrate yourself first, see what is behind the eyes. You will find such immense treasures right behind the eyes without going anywhere. First explore those, instead of just descending into a trance and forgetting even the physical reality, which is giving you so much. Even this physical reality, you can't get in the lower centers. What are you going to expect Therefore, go behind the eyes and find a higher reality. Go into a higher sky. Pierce the astral region, where you will find that the bondage of gravity, the bondage of this body, the bondage of darkness, all these are given up. The bondage of misunderstanding is given up. Try and see that there is a way in which souls are embodied in astral forms, shining in their armor, shining in their forms, shining in their clothes, shining in their furniture and homes, who live there. And look at your home there. Don't go to sleep from there. And discover the beauty of living in that region. Go further up. Explore the Akashic records, explore the causal region, explore the mind, explore how all that you are doing here is predetermined there. Explore the cause of karma. And then don't tarry there. Go further up and discover your own self. Go beyond the Brahm, beyond the creator of the universal mind. Go to Par Brahm, beyond Brahm. Go into your spiritual region of the soul and find yourself. And at least for once say, now I know who I am. I am the soul, the spirit. I am not mind. I am not confined to time and space and causation. I am not confined to karma. Karma was illusion. Mind was illusion. Discover the region in which you can find and make karma an illusion. Anyone who has gone to the Par Brahm stage, the third stage above the universal mind, will find that karma itself is illusion. The whole world below is illusion. Destroy all the karma by rising to that level and see your own spirit and feel that you are the soul. Don't stop there. Go further up and cross not only the nothingness but the great nothingness, and go and find your own home, where you will find that you are nothing but part of your own Father, the universality of the spirit, not universality of the mind. You are not a universal mind, you are a universal soul, universal spirit whom we have called God. Therefore, the mystics taught us this method to go into these very regions. And those who went on this spiritual path and discovered this high reality of themselves, they saw clearly for themselves the cause of ill health and how ascending in this spiritual path would cure us and cure others who came into contact with us. That is why when we look at the history of healing arts and we come to the spiritual healing, we find that the best spiritual healing available today is the healing through love. And since we don't have love, we call attachments love, we have to look for somebody who can teach us the nature of love, who can tell us the distinction between attachments and love. We get attached to people, we have infatuation for people, we constantly repeat, I love you, and we don't know that after a few minutes it can break and we are no more in love. This kind of attachment which we are calling love is not the love that the mystics speak of. The mystics speak of that love which makes you forget yourself, which identifies you with the beloved, which makes you go into these higher regions, which puts the mind in second place, which puts the ego in second place. If that kind of love you want to experience, go to the mystics and learn it from them. We can't learn this love from those who are not experiencing it. We must experience this love in the presence of the mystics who themselves are not only living in the range, living in the consciousness of love, but in their company we can experience that love. And when we experience that love, it flows from us also. The more time we spend with the mystics, the more we are infused with the spirit of love. Then we can call ourselves healers, not before that. And before we go out healing other people, we should first heal ourselves with the same love. A person who cannot love himself or herself will not be able to love anybody else. A person who constantly condemns himself or herself will not be able to extend love to anybody else. Therefore, stop condemnation. If you want to condemn, condemn your mind. Condemn the devil in you. Condemn the negativity in you. Don't condemn yourself. You are the soul, the spirit, which is so pure and beautiful. You haven't seen it. It's full of love in each one of us. Yeah. There is no exception to this rule. Therefore, when we rise to our own reality and discover our own self, then we find the love within which heals us and heals the others. I would verily say to all of you, there is no spiritual healing except the healing that comes by love. Forget all the other healing arts. If you want to take part in the healing, heal with love. Heal with love. If you have any questions to ask on this presentation, I shall be very happy to try and answer. If you have a question on other than this presentation, you may also take the opportunity to ask those questions.
Will you please explain why people use the word love and yet they have no feeling of divine or divinity within them.
Because the mistake.
Consciousness of divinity has to be within ourselves before we are understanding the word love. Because in the beginning the Word was with God, and the Word was God. So we have to be conscious of God. And we can't use the word love unless we are divine with God, one with God.
That's true. People do not understand love because they try to understand everything with their minds, everything with their intellects. And intellect and mind, as you know, is ego. And therefore they start calling their ego relationship with people as love. You see people who speak like this, I love you. If you see them closely, they love I more than love and more than you. I comes first. It's mostly an ego trip. And you can hit the ego on the head and they don't love you anymore. If you want to test out if they really love their ego or they love the beloved, you can hit their ego and they love no more. So this is all a misnomer for attachments. There was an Indian guru, he got old and he said, I have to appoint a successor to carry on my spiritual work. And I want to determine who is the most rightful person, most qualified to do the spiritual work after me. So he said, tomorrow morning I am going to give you a test. Whoever passes the test will become the next guru, the next spiritual master, and work after me. Thousands of people went there, his disciples and seekers and some newcomers and some bystanders. They all said, let's see what kind of test he is going to give to select his successor. And he went into an open space and he said, well, this is a lot of open space and you have a lot of mud and dirt here. Now dig the dirt and make it into nice form platforms. Make nice mud platforms. Whoever makes the best mud platform will be appointed the guru. And people laughed. They said, what's happened to him? Either he's gone too old, or this is a test where there's some hidden meaning, we haven't understood it. Many left the testing ground, but many started making those mud platforms. And they kept on making, and the guru went around inspecting them. By the evening, by the afternoon, he saw all of them. He says, none of them passes the test. They are no good. They don't come up to my perfection. Demolish them and start all over again. And so all the people demolished them and started making more perfect ones, better angles, better curves. And they said, let's make the best platforms we can make. So a few hours later, the guru came for inspection. He says, they are no good. This mud and dirt itself is wrong. Let's move to another place. So he took all of them there. Many left him at that time. They said there's something wrong going on. He started this experiment again at the next place. And people went on making these mud platforms. Ultimately, most people gave up. Only a few went on. They said there must be a secret in what he's doing. And he changed the place again and kept on demolishing. Ultimately, only one man was left. And he kept on making the mud platform. And they said, are you a fool? Don't you see what's happened to your guru? He's gone crazy. He's old, senile. Why are you doing this? He said, I don't care. I don't care for the mud platform. I care for love. If the guru tells me, make these all my life, I'll keep on making. I don't want anything more than that. He was appointed as the next guru, and a very successful guru. What was the guru testing? He was not testing the skill in making mud platforms. He was testing the love and devotion. The only real qualification required for spiritual work. So when we have love and devotion, we are spiritually qualified. We don't need ego. We don't need any other kind of acquisition. We need real love and devotion. And that can be tested even in a means which the ego will not understand. The ego went away. They threw away those tools and went away, said, we don't want to make any more platforms. But the one with love and devotion stayed on. Yes?
Ishwar, I was just concerned when you say if the person who doesn't really love themselves can't really love anybody else. The question is, if a person finds that they can't love themselves, how do they get out of that dilemma of not being able to love themselves and in turn being able to give love?
The person who cannot love himself does not know who himself is. So the dilemma is
that what you call the self is not yourself. If you knew who yourself is, you would automatically love. When a person says, oh, I am so bad, I am so filthy, he is not talking of himself. He is talking of his companion called the mind. Therefore, he is misidentifying himself with the mind and therefore feeling like that. Such a person does not know himself and therefore cannot love anyone else. Such a person must discover that what is being seen as negative in himself is not himself but his mind. And he is separate from the mind and he is the soul. A discovery of one's own soul makes you love yourself. Then you can love anybody else.
If the person is really feels that love for himself, then it's just the opposite.
Then when one feels love for oneself, one's real self, one extends and radiates that love for others. Because that love for the soul. Yes, Jack?
When a healer and a yogi wants to help somebody, to heal somebody, how does he know he's not interfering with the karma? That the karma should go on until that person develops, evolves, and grows from that karma. So when does that person discern the time that he can heal, or should not heal, because that person is supposed to go through that?
When the spiritual masters heal, they heal the suffering of the person out of compassion, but they allow the karma to continue. The karma can be continued in an outline pattern and the intensity of its suffering can be reduced. They say that the healing by a spiritual master is like taking a person who is to be hanged by a noose becomes like a pinprick on the finger. The finger pinprick is still there, so the karma is still there because they think it is necessary. I should, in answer to this question, explain to you, if we had no karma, we wouldn't be here. So we have to have karma. We have to have karma just to be here. And if we have all good karma giving us all the goodies, then also we won't be here, we'll be in heaven. And if we have all bad karma to be punished all the time, we wouldn't be here, we would be in hell. To be in an earth planet in this form of free will, we have to have a mixture of karma, and ups and downs, good and bad, good and bad. And this karma should be continuous from birth to death to make us stay here. And why is it necessary to stay here? To be able to seek the higher reality beyond this place. We can't seek that reality except through this. So karma is necessary. But when we talk of healing, we're talking of removing the intensity of suffering. And the karma still stays. But in the case of the psychic healers, they sometimes do not know what karma should be retained and what should not be retained. They start curing people whose karma is the very basis for them to grow. And therefore they interfere with the growth of spirituality. Yes?
Sort of a follow-on to that, it seems like there's a place for spiritual healing and there's a place for traditional medicine. That there's no way that even knowing who your soul is, making that contact, that doesn't mean that you're going to reverse the aging process. It doesn't mean that some bone that was broken and didn't heal right is going to change, right? There's limits to what the spiritual healing actually does.
There is no limit to what spiritual healing can do, but there's a limit to what ought to be done. And therefore the normal procedures of healing through medical assistance, through other means available according to contemporary known healing arts should be adopted. That's part of the karma. If you call a physician and give him a fee, that was your karma. The physician doesn't cure you just because he gives you a medicine. Sometimes a yogi in India, he used to say, I don't want to go through 7 days of medication, I'll pay 7 times the fee to the physician and get well in 1 day. He said, I'm not paying him for the medicine, I'm paying him for the karma. That I have to respond to the treatment by his care is part of the karma. Therefore, while we are here, we have to do the best according to the norms for healing and the healing arts set around us as part of karma. But the spiritual healing takes away the intensity of suffering and allows you to see why you are in that karmic process, what spiritual progress you can make, what you are supposed to make, what is karma supposed to teach us. Understand what is the purpose of these ups and downs of karma. What is the purpose of human life? After all, human life is based upon karma. What is the purpose of human life? The purpose of human life is to learn something more in the process of evolution. Therefore, karma is acting as a step towards learning. So every karmic activity, both good and bad, is a step towards further learning. So we cannot just eliminate all karma and say we can still learn spirituality.
So karma is a must and has come to stay here and will stay. But it is the intensity of suffering which is reduced by what we call spiritual intervention or spiritual healing. Grace is another name for spiritual intervention. Yes?
Field of medicine, I don't know if we call it medicine exactly, but health, called psychoneuroimmunology. And they say that different illnesses have different patterns of psychology. For example, cancer patients tend to be submissive, and they need to learn to become more aggressive and more outgoing and so on. Now, how does that relate to the karma in a past life? Did you say, or in an earlier year, did you say it's a karma that causes it? Does that karma cause that type of personality?
Yes.
So that if you work on your personality, could you, well, anyway, would that heal you too if you try to work on it?
That's right. That's true. In fact, in the future, in the next decade or two, that will be employed frequently. Not to treat individual symptoms and the sicknesses, but to treat the system as a whole, which can lead to those symptoms. This is already being worked on and will become popular. Yes?
What I'm saying is, what I'm hearing is that the karma can be changed. We can change our own karma. But if we can change our own karma, what about the predestined Akashic records that are already written that says that the karmic pattern will be this? You will have cancer, and Carol is just saying that, well, can't we just think the cancer away? And you're saying yes, right?
Those records are very interesting. Those records say that you will have cancer and then you will get intervention and change it. Those records are not here. Those records are at a level where interventions are also recorded. But over here it looks like you made a change. Yes?
I don't know about anybody else, but I know that my journey to finding who I am is dragging out. It's not right away. And what do we do in the meantime that's different? You know, I know I shouldn't cut myself down, but what can I do
to build yourself up? Build yourself up.
But without making the mind egotistic, or without...
No, you don't have to be... When you look at the mind and see the mind is doing its own job, you can tell the mind, you do your job, I'll do mine. A person who has difficulties in the beginning stages of spiritual growth, there's a good lesson that is taught, that if your mind is so crazy and acting so restless and running riot inside you, and you try to control it, it runs more riot. You try to do meditation, it brings up all kinds of thoughts. It doesn't let you settle down here at all. It's so fast and it's terrible, you don't know what to do with it. If that stage comes, then you should just relax and say, mind, you do your thing, I'll do mine. Yeah. When you say that, then you start distinguishing yourself from the mind. Then you can love that part of yourself which is not the mind. You have to discover that part of yourself which is not the mind, which is the soul. And you can love that soul at all times. Because when you distinguish yourself, love will come automatically in you. Yes?
What about, like, using trying to think more positively with your mind? Should you bother to do that, or just watch it? Just say, you do your job.
It's better to let it do its own job. Because if you get trapped in the positive and negative thinking, then you remain identified with the mind. What our purpose is to find out who we are. Supposing we concentrate on positive thinking, then what we are doing is that we are identifying ourselves with one activity of the mind. The mind is happy. It's very easy to do it. You will see a meditation in which you become an observer of the mind is far more difficult than positive thinking. Positive thinking is easy. The mind cooperates with you. Fine, that's me having positive thinking. I am thinking positively. So the soul is lost in the process. So it is better to watch the mind doing positive thinking and watch the mind doing negative thinking and smile at both. And say, good, you were my company and I listened to you all this while. Now I'm going to tell you what to do.
So even if it's telling you to do something crazy, whatever, something...
Don't listen to it. Don't listen to the mind. Tell the mind what to do. Yes.
Mind is always duality, isn't it?
Yes. Yes, Peter.
This digresses somewhat, but on the way down here, we were discussing Atlantis, and we were wondering whether what we hear, that most of us now are reincarnations of Atlantis, of the Atlanteans, and further, that the some of the Atlanteans have reincarnated into what we call dolphins now. Can you comment on that?
Well, the cycle of birth and rebirth has led to certain spurts of civilizations on the planet Earth, and Atlantis was one of those. After Atlantis, there has been one or two more spurts in the same way. It's about 3,000, 4,000 years interval when the same group of advanced people after the cycle come back again. So this is the time when a lot of souls who were incarnated in human form in Atlantis are again in human form here. And some of them talk with so much knowledge and light, people say, where are they getting it from? It's not from current experience, it is from the continuity of experience from past incarnations. So to that extent, your statement is correct. About dolphins, I would not like to comment because we don't want to be dolphins. We'd like to go to higher levels of consciousness, not merely of embodiment. See, go from one body to another, we have been doing it for millions of years, not only 10,000, 20,000 years, millions of years. We want to find a way, a spiritual way, in which we can get out of this cycle of birth and rebirth. So if we had a good time at Atlantis, and now we have a good time in the current century, and then we want to have another good time 3,000 years hence, we are still in the trap, in the prison house. To change the cells from a C-class cell to a B-class cell to A-class cell doesn't take us out of the prison. So improving the condition of our embodiment is not good enough, according to spiritual teachings. We should find the way by which we can escape from this cycle, and that escape is when we escape from the illusion of the mind. When we know we are not the mind and can leave the mind behind, then we will escape. Yes?
Where's the grand solution? Does your consciousness have to start all over again?
The grand dissolution is below Sachkhand. Grand dissolution is below. Once you reach that, there is no dissolution. That's permanent. Any other question? Yes?
Well, about not coming back here, if when we leave the earth this time and we don't come back, we're more than likely going to spend some time on the astral plane, I presume, and do whatever we have to do. Are there a wide range of things we can do? Can we provide service to struggling humanity, or what kinds of things? Because I don't imagine we go directly back to God. I imagine the process of evolution goes on for a long time.
Everything that we can do here, we can do there, plus more. So you have a larger variety of activity than here.
Right.
There is a distinction. You gain in the variety of activities, you gain in the variety of experiences. The only thing you lose is free will. In the rest you gain.
Is it that sudden? It seems like just like you get the right time, that free will would just be a little bit different, a little bit.
It's a lot different. Even here, supposing you knew what you are going to do in the next minute, in the next hour, tomorrow, supposing you knew in advance, what kind of free will would you have? It will still be free, but you will know in advance what free will you are going to use. So the fun of deciding will be lost. Yes, you get to know the future. Not automatically, but at will, when you want to. So the quality of free will undergoes a big change. Yes?
My son asked me the other day, who made God?
Consciousness made God, and the name we give to consciousness is Word. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. The Word made God. The Word made everything including God. And God made more gods, and gods made more creators, and we never knew where we are, which one we are calling God. We call the creator of this universe, and we say he must be God, because we see no more. When we find out that creator, we find there are so many creators like him. We say, wow, we didn't know all that. We thought there's only one creator here. And then we say, who created you? Must be one creator who created them. So we go higher up to find who created creators. And we find there is a great creator who created creators, and we go and see him and we find he's created by another one. How long can we go on like this? We have to go on till we reach the spiritual realms of knowledge, where we discover that this hierarchy of creators and gods has been set up in motion to run automatic systems of creation. So the rules of nature, the laws of nature, they come and they run this because of these hierarchies of administrators, whom we call God and worship as God. So who is the true God?
Only such a person can tell us who knows that there is more than one level of consciousness. At each level of consciousness, there is one God. And as you go to the higher level, you find that the lower level was created by another God, who was more real and more God than the one we thought was God. So it's a spiritual path that takes you higher and higher and gives you more discovery. So God, ultimately who created God was that power of consciousness which can make creation possible, and we call it the Word. And not only in the Bible, in St. John's Gospel is it called the Word, it has been called the Word in every religious scripture of the world. Every religious scripture says, in the beginning there was Word, Naam, Shabad, Naad, Kalma, Bange Asmani, Holy Ghost, and similar names given to the same power, which is the creative power which creates God as the creator, and then that multiplies further into this creation. Yes, I'm sorry I gave you more complex answer for your son.
Question on love again.
The rest Jack will tell you.
Question on love again. Does God give us the love in a degree form? In other words, as we progress from this level to the next level, the love increases in its intensity. But I guess my question is that when that love is experienced, even on the physical plane, is it as intense here when you really get that feeling of love as it is in Satchidanand?
It's get diluted with our thoughts. Over here, love is diluted by our thoughts. When we have love in our consciousness, the thoughts run from all sides and take over and comment upon that love and dilute it and sometimes suppress it and usurp it.
But is it ever as intense at any point when that love is being experienced here as it is there?
Yes, when you separate yourself from the thoughts. Even here, right sitting in the physical body, if you can identify yourself with your soul, your own spiritual self, and not with the thoughts, love is intense in the same way.
About the self-esteem thing. I don't know how safe it is or how far you can take it safely on the mental level, because I don't know the difference between being conceited and having self-esteem about yourself and just feeling good about it. How far can you take it? It's safe.
There is no difference between mental self-esteem and conceit. They are the same thing. Mental self-esteem is the same as conceit. Self-esteem for the conscious self, which is the soul, is not conceit. So one should be having esteem for the consciousness, the soul in a person, rather than the thoughts and the ego and the mind. And then you won't be conceited. Well, thank you very much. I was very happy to meet all of you. Hope to see you again.